Hello there, friends. Pegasus in the Starfield with an informational video about decorating with interactive Havoc items that tend to sink. This applies to outposts, the dream home, and ships. We've all been there, right? Set a bunch of stuff just the way you want it and leave happy, but when you come back, your items are partway in the counters or clipping through the floors and have to be picked up and placed all over again. Miss O has a great tutorial on decorating with junk items that helped me a lot when I was just starting to build outposts, and she briefly touched on the sinking items issue there. Using her strategy as a basis, I determined a way that consistently keeps items in place, whether they're set by hand or in build mode, on ships and in outposts. The Dream Home requires a slightly different method, which I'll also explain. It took a lot of trial and error to figure out, but it works consistently for me if the steps are followed in the right order. It's your choice whether you decorate by hand, just set things wherever you want. The benefits are that they won't have collision errors when you place them close to other objects, and they're stackable. But they will still be movable, so if your companions are as graceful as mine, you might have to pick them up again. Placing items in build mode makes them a sort of soft static. They won't move, yet they can still be taken into your inventory. The drawback is that the game uses their collision boxes to determine how close they can be placed to other objects. Its tolerance for crowding is low, and it also doesn't allow for stacking. Some things like books and the Galacticat plushie will be set standing upright in build mode, so you might need to place them by hand if you want them in a different orientation. This soft static persistence mechanic is also why Miss O's and Perfectly Humble's methods for filling closed bookcases and shelves work the way they do, which I've used a couple times in my builds and really add depth to living spaces. Links to those are in the description below. So either way of decorating is fine, and you can use both in the same session with these methods. I like to use a combination for a natural lived-in feeling, depending on how much clutter I want and where I'm placing it. When you've finished placing your items at your outpost, you need to go into your ship. Make a quick save and reload it. Once you're loaded back in, exit your ship again and fast travel to another planetary tile.
Welcome aboard. Find your seats, stow your belongings.
Using the ship cell is the key here, and full disclosure, because I have no background in programming or development and am very new to modding, I consulted with an AI tool to get a deeper understanding of the technical aspects of this process and why it works. AI can make mistakes. However, the explanation it gave me for the dynamic object behaviors and persistency makes sense based on my experiences while decorating in Starfield. Basically, the ship cell is relatively small and isolated compared to the world cell the outpost is located in. Because it's a contained and consistent environment, it acts as a sort of safe zone that reliably tells the game to finalize your item placements. So the physics engine is able to lock the items into the position and remember exactly where they're supposed to be. Since I've been working on a mod and using NifScope a fair bit, I've taken a closer look at how some of these Havoc objects are built, and that additional insight has provided some clues as to why the sinking happens in the first place. Most of these objects have an internal pivot point, or origin, that is located in the center of mass. This helps the physics engine determine how they're supposed to react dynamically. You can actually see it when you pick up an object, as the game pulls the object's origin point to center on your cursor. If the cell your objects are in is reloaded without these locations being properly baked in or saved to memory, when the cell reloads, it often tries to place that object's origin point on the surface instead of whichever part of it you had placed. Because the origin isn't always at the very bottom of the object, this can cause the item to sink into surfaces, as the game tries to resolve those physics interactions. Using the ship is critical to the success of this method for outposts, and when you leave it again, the outpost cell is loaded from the memory you just saved, with everything locked into the position you put them in before you went into the ship. Fast traveling away gives it another cycle of loading and unloading to make sure they stay. If you're decorating inside your ship, start from the quick save reload step, then exit your ship and fast travel. Because you're already starting in that stable, less complex cell, it's easier for the physics engine to initially lock your dynamic objects into place during that quick save reload. The exit ship and fast travel step provides the necessary final cycle of cell unloading and reloading from the saved data, ensuring those precise positions are fully solidified and remembered by the game for future sessions, even for those finicky dynamic objects, with one exception, Galacticat. But he's a cat. He does what he wants. Now for the vanilla dream home, this is the method I use. I place items, then make an exit save, not a quick save. Reload from that, leave the home to the exterior world cell, then fast travel away. Here we are after reloading that exit save, and the 2 Galacticats are exactly where I hand placed them. The exit save pushes item positions into the game's memory more firmly than a quick save might. When you reload from an exit save, the game rebuilds everything from that memory, which helps properly bake in those item locations for good. Just a heads up, my testing for player homes has so far only been in the vanilla dream home. I haven't yet explored how other vanilla or modded player homes might handle item persistence, so your mileage may vary there. I've always been a why person. I like understanding the mechanism behind the function. There may be other ways to settle objects so that they persist where they've been placed, but these are the steps that work consistently for me. Figuring out these processes has saved me a lot of time and frustration and made the cozy parts of my gameplay that much better. If you're into decorating in Starfield, I hope this helps you too. This is the end of the steps to prevent items from sinking. If you're like me and knowing the why appeals to you, stay tuned for a deeper dive into the cat that defies Starfield's physics. I made a case study on Galacticat, and I'm going further into his dynamic details next. Galacticat is quite the unique item because of his ragdoll behavior. His arms and legs can be moved independently of his body, and he has multiple pivot points that are all connected. We're going to get a little more technical and take a peek under the hood in NifScope. I'm not an expert on NifScope by any means, but through my work on my current mod, I've been looking at a lot of different items. Some I wanted to change details the creation kit's scope doesn't reach, some were to experiment, and some I looked at purely out of curiosity. All of these showed me something about how NIFs work. So looking at Galacticat's block list on the left, he has a main node, and below that is the list of his parts, the meshes for his body and his helmet. Nested between those meshes is the reason he can ragdoll, and the likely reason he misbehaves so much, even when I use my item setting steps to lock him in place after arranging him by hand. Lines 2 and 71 hold his material data, the one we're interested in is 67. Opening this 9 node, it branches into additional nodes for his spine and hips. Also within that node is a line item esco keep, which is a specific physics flag, or a property within the NIF file. These flags tell the game how their dynamic physics should behave. Each of those roots branches out to his extremities with 9 nodes and flags for each segment. They all represent a different point of articulation and a piece of physics data that needs to be precisely preserved and reloaded. He's more than a ragdoll. With all these different pieces, he reminds me of the clothing files, which have lots of bones to allow for realistic draping and movement. I'm running this demonstration in the vanilla dream home, and I have 2 small Galacticat plushies and a skin cream bottle as a control for the settling behavior, placing them all by hand. One of the plushies I'll set face up on the desk along with that bottle, the other will go face down on the stool. Again, for the dream home, a quick save doesn't work to settle these dynamic items properly. It has to be an exit save. And now that we're back from that item setting cycle, there are a couple of interesting things going on that I want to point out. First, note the control bottle is exactly where I placed it on top of the desk. For simpler Havoc items, this method works perfectly. But Galacticat truly does have the spirit of a defiant cat. From the slack lying pose they were in before, they changed to the static form, the T-pose plank. Note, that's how he looked in NifScope, which is his default position. The difference in whether he sank here depends on which way his geometry was facing. Remember, his tail and legs also have those physics flags. So when the one on the desk turned static, the legs and tail were forced through the desk geometry. Meanwhile, the face-down Galacticat on the stool, while rigid, remained above it and did not sink. But look at this. We can wake his physics back up with a simple bump. So although his ragdoll behavior was suppressed at some point in the process of exiting to the world cell or fast traveling, he can easily revert to his usual floppiness without having to be re-added to my inventory. The one on the desk is the same, it isn't locked into that rigid pose, but it is intersecting the desk's geometry, so bear with me here while I pull him out. And here's the ultimate test of his unique nature. After waking his physics up, I left the dream home and came back again to see how the game would resolve his dynamic properties through another unload-reload cycle. This indicates that, likely because of his complex physics, his dynamic pose can't be saved, so he defaults to that rigid state when the cell is reloaded. But because he was placed by hand, he retains the underlying dynamic properties that allow him to be woken up and revert to his floppy state when interacted with, unlike objects made soft static in build mode. Galacticat is a fascinating exception to the physics-settling behavior I've observed in Starfield through the course of decorating my player home, outposts, and ships. But even if he is a cat who does what he wants, I hope this additional insight into why was interesting to you. I'm glad you're here. Thanks so much for watching. Catch a smile out there.